What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here. Today, we got a little update from SGC Pete. He did a little State of the Union, one of his little sit-down things in front of his big fancy desk, looking all proper and everything. We have not heard from SGC in a hot minute, and they snuck out with some new specials. This is something that I actually speculated about during the PSA price increase video. When that came out, that I wonder if an SGC price increase would be coming, or if Nat and the boys would let them leverage some specials, maybe to kind of steal some volume from PSA to lighten the load a little bit. And lo and behold, SGC Pete sits down behind his little presidential desk and spits out a couple of specials. I do have a little gripe with Peter in one thing. One of the specials is 1970s and 80s, and he referred to the 80s as vintage. And I say, no, sir. No, sir. You will not consider cards in the decade that I was born as vintage. I refuse. I do not care. What you say, how you want to word it, this is not a vintage sale, at least not in my mind. This thing's going to auto-scroll, so I got to kind of keep clicking around. But what we have here is 70s and 80s, anything. $2,500 declared value and under, 12 bucks, 5 to 10 day turnaround time. Now, I know what a lot of you are saying. Oh my God, SGC, their prices, their resale value sucks. Why would anyone ever send anything to there? 70s and 80s stuff, the further you go back in cards, the more, I'm not going to use the V word, but when you look at older sets, the price comparison between a PSA 10 and SGC 10, a PSA 9 and SGC 9, so on and so forth, does skew a lot closer. PSA gets the heavy premium on ultra modern and 90s and 2000s stuff. When you get back into the 80s, the 70s, and actual vintage cards like the 50s, the 40s, the 60s, then that gap does tend to narrow a little bit. And also, I'm very critical of SGC's holder. I'm not a big fan of the way it looks on most ultra modern cards. It does look good if we go back to the homepage real quick. Like, it does look good on a lot of 70s and 80s stuff. A lot of these cards really pop in the holder. I will give them that 100%. Maybe you're a set collector. Maybe you got some older stuff that you want to potentially flip, see if it grades high, or maybe you're a little concerned about something being trimmed or faked or altered or whatever. Not a bad deal for 12 bucks and get it back in a few days. Part 2, remember, $2,500 declared value. Part 2 of the special, modern football. So I believe, it does not say here, I believe it's anything 2010 and up. Yeah, 2010 and present, 12 bucks, $5 to $10 a card. Prism's releasing right now. A lot of that stuff's hitting the market. If you wanted to try to be first to market on a brand new product and take the quick flip cash with an SGC 10, you could do that. I've done whole videos on the timing of, are you better off to sell an SGC 10 at 60% of market value or 70% of market value or whatever it is, but you're able to turn your money over a lot faster? Are you better off to do that than send the PSA and max value, even though it might take a couple of months to get back? And a lot of people, their default answer would be, oh, I'm sending it to PSA. Like, it's not even a question. But when you actually run the numbers, it does come out to be a little closer than you think that it would. And that would be something, anytime you're grading, I've said this for years now, grading is a math equation. What did you acquire the card for? What is it worth in its graded form in a 10 and a 9? Because assuming it's ultra modern, it's going to get one of those two grades. And then you run the numbers. If it grades an SGC 10, it's this. If it grades a PSA 10, it's this. Here's my profits. Here's my margins. And then the X factor in all that, because that's pretty easy. But the X factor is turnaround times. And turnaround times are the great equalizer. Because if you're going to send the SGC, say a Jaden Daniels base Prism, you're going to get that back in a week, maybe 2. If you send that to PSA at bulk, if you send regular service, you'll get it back in a couple of weeks. But if you send it at bulk, it's going to cost you a little bit more money. And right now, it might take you 3 months before that card comes back. You know, a month for them to check it in, and then 2 months for them to do their thing. A lot can happen in that time. So even though a PSA 10 might comp for way more, even in 3 months, it could potentially drop in value significantly versus locking in the quick and early profits now. Right now, prices are so all over the place, it's hard to get a good grasp on exactly what stuff is selling for. There's been a couple Jaden Daniel base prisms sell for in the 150 to 170 range. And then PSA 10 base prisms, there's only been a handful of sales, and some of them look awful, suspect. There was one that went for like $2,000 that I don't think anyone believes is actually real. There was a more recent best offer buy it now listed for $800 that sold for $600. But once again, sure, that's today. The problem is you don't have your card as a PSA 10 today. It's going to take you 3 months to get it back. Now, you can send it regular service at $75 per card and see what happens, and you'll get it back in probably about 3 weeks, roughly speaking, maybe closer to 4. That's what I just recently sent a Paul Skeens in at regular service. That got delivered the week of Christmas, so maybe it was a little bit longer. I got that card back yesterday. There'll be a video on that. Don't worry, it's coming later this week. So, you know, who knows what that card could be valued at in a month after a bunch of supply hits. Or you send it at bulk service and you get it back in 3 months. Who knows? Who knows? That's the gamble of it all. And then you're also assuming that it's going to get a 10. So there is definitely a play on the SGC churn and burn game, but you're really playing the I want to be first to market with a Gem Mint 10 graded card. Because here's the thing, and this is with any grading company, PSA or SGC, if you get a 9, you're getting smoked. You know, back in the day, and when I say back in the day, I mean like 3 years ago, you used to be able to get a 9 and it would cover your costs. There'd be a slight premium put on the 9 over raw. That is no longer the case. You are lucky if you could get raw value for a PSA 9. It's the way that it is. So if you pull a 9 or even an SGC 9.5, now an SGC 9.5, you might cover case cost. And what I mean by case cost is the cost that it was for you to send it off to grading, especially if you're talking about base cards or lower value cards. So these are all things that you have to keep in mind when you're doing the whole grading game. It's not as simple as just box it up and send it out and hope it gets 10. If you actually want to be semi-profitable at grading, if you just want to send it in and roll the dice and see what happens, you know, you do you. But yes, SGC 10s do not sell anywhere close to modern PSA 10s. However, the time advantage that you have, if you could turn over inventory fast enough and use the money that you get back out of the sale to buy more things to send in the grade, and you're rinsing and repeating over and over again, it is definitely an angle. But it's a very specific set of circumstances that's going to work for most people. Now, you know, factor Jaden Daniels out of it. Maybe you have some lower end cards that you want to get slabbed up and try to move, whatever. Or you want to have something in your hands quickly for maybe the Super Bowl. You're going to make an angle on that. Okay, sure. Send it off to SGC. You'll probably get it back in time. That'll probably be cutting it a little close for the Super Bowl, but you might at least have your seller ready images by then. But that is, and always has been, of the more recent era, the angle, or air quote, the play with SGC is the speed of the return compared to the other grading companies. And for $12 a card, it's also a good pre-grade service. If you just want like a second opinion on something, because you'll get it back quick and it's not super expensive. And this, once again, you know, $12 a card to grade with SGC. Now, these are two special, so it's not like it's wide open for $12. But it's things like this of, if I can grade with SGC for 12, why am I ever sending something to one of the pop-up grading companies when I can send it to SGC, who is a legitimate grader in the space, has great customer service, super fast turnaround times. It's not PSA, but it is at least a brand people trust. And you're not going to get laughed out of the room if you lay out an SGC slab at a trade night. I do not understand the use case for these small mom and pop graders. And maybe that's a personal bias for me, but if you're saying cost is an issue, $12 is pretty cheap to grade your freshly ripped football cards. That's all I'm saying. Yes, their holder is not perfect, but if you just want it graded up and you don't really care that much, or if you do care, then just put the card in a mag. If you don't really, if you're concerned about how it looks in the individual holder. So that's all I got for you, boys and girls. As always, curious for your thoughts and comments down below. Will you be taking advantage of either one of these two specials? I'm not going to say it, the older card special. 80s is not vintage, Peter. It is not vintage. Or will you take advantage of the modern football special? Nice thing about that 70s and 81s is it's not sports specific. It's anything. Non-sports, sports doesn't make a difference. So that's all I got. Catch you boys and girls later. Peace.